welcome to our webinar today, Become a Future NHS Leader. The webinar is specifically about the NHS Graduate Management Training Scheme, or GMTS for short, and it's specifically for the upcoming application for the September 2024 cohort. So this is for applications that you'll make this year in September, which we'll talk about later, ready to start the scheme next September. It's fantastic to see so many. We've got a lot to cover, so we'll do some quick introductions. So my name is Andrew Davidson. I'm a GMTS Senior Manager for Attraction and Recruitment. So my responsibility really is for the entirety of your experience in terms of the university events or the brand ambassadors that you might have met, the webinars, the application and assessment process. And so I'm really pleased to see you today. I'm just going to hand over to each individual. We've got a few people joining us. Gabriel, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Hi all, my name is Gabriel Moody. I am the GMTS Leadership Development Coordinator. I work alongside Andrew in Attraction and Recruitment, and I'll be sort of looking at the chat and looking at the sort of the Q&A section, and I'll be helping out around this webinar. So it's really nice to see all of you.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucy. Oh, sorry. Hi everyone, I'm Lucy. So I'm on the general management on September 2022 intake.
And Kieran?
Hi everyone, I'm Kieran. I'm on the 22 intake as well, September, and I'm currently in maternity.
Brilliant, thank you. So I just skipped over the purpose of today, really. So we're going to talk a little bit about the overview of the GMTS. So what is the Graduate Management Training Scheme and the NHS? So its purpose, how it's structured. We'll talk importantly about the application process. We'll talk a little bit about what the assessment selection process looks like, so you've got some sight of that, and also some of the resources that we've made available that you can access prior to applying. And as you just so we've got some of our fantastic trainees today, Lucy and Kieran, who are here to sort of share a little bit about their experience and their motivations for applying to the scheme, but also just to give you a bit more of an insight about what it is to be a GMTS trainee and what a day in the life of a trainee looks like. And then importantly, if there are questions, as I've said, do post them in the chat and we'll try and address as many of them as we can later on. Okay, so the NHS. I mean, the NHS is something that we've all really come into contact with. So it's one of those organisations that we sort of know, but perhaps don't know a huge amount about, other than the small experience that we might have had. The NHS has been around for about 75 years, and for 65 of those, we've had a graduate management training scheme. The King's Fund is an organisation that does a lot of research into health, and it estimates that every day there are around about 1.6 million patient interactions. Okay, so across the country, across the NHS, 1.6 million patient interactions each day. And that's 570 million a year. So there's a huge amount of activity across the NHS. It employs around about 1.3 million people. So it does make us, depending on what source you use, somewhere between the 5th and the 7th largest employer in the world. And ironically, that those that are ahead of us are things like the US, the Chinese and the Russian Defence Forces, Walmart and McDonald's, which also rank slightly higher than the NHS. As an organisation, we think of it as one organisation, but the NHS is actually made up of lots of smaller organisations, and there are about 8,300 of those. And within that, there are about 300 or so different occupations that make up the diverse workforce. So the Department of Health allocates around about 130 billion in funds to deliver the service that you experience. So you can sort of get an impression that it's a pretty significantly sized organisation. It's quite complex in the way that it operates. But its overarching purpose really is to provide healthcare free at the point of delivery for every individual within the UK. In terms of the values that are important to the NHS, these are really key. And so we're starting today sharing those because they're also very important within the GMTS. So no matter where you are within the NHS, you're going to find these 6 values threaded through. So they are working together for patients. Patients come first in everything that we do in every part of the NHS. Respect and dignity, that we value each person as an individual. We respect their aspirations and their commitments in life. The NHS has a commitment to quality of care, so it insists on quality and best patient experience at all times. Compassion, central to the care of the NHS. It's about responding with humanity and kindness to each person's pain, distress, or particular need. Improving lives is a key value in that we strive to improve health and well-being at all times. And importantly, everyone counts. So, we're maximising the resources available to the NHS for the benefit of the whole community, or each and every community, to make sure that no one's excluded or discriminated against or left behind, and they can access health. Now, within GMTS, they're also particularly key, and every trainee, everyone within GMTS will also hold themselves to those 6 values. But in terms of what the graduate management training scheme is specifically, it's a fast-track leadership development programme. It prepares trainees and individuals for quite a wide variety of leadership roles across the NHS, across those 8,300 or so organisations. It's a fully funded development programme. So participants and trainees don't make a contribution to it at all. They don't pay anything for the experience, but the hosts that they work within, make a contribution to the training and the education experience that trainees undergo. It is specifically a non-clinical management training programme. Okay, so if, for example, you've decided on a career in health and actually looking for a more clinical experience, then this probably isn't the pathway for you. But that isn't to say that if you are on a clinical pathway currently, that you shouldn't consider us. We have a number of trainees who have trained as doctors or GPs or medics, or have gone through a clinical training experience and have then made the decision to actually focus more on a managerial pathway. The key purpose, though, really of the scheme is to develop senior NHS leaders of the future. So, we have a large number of scheme alumni. There are many of the previous NHS England CEOs who've taken part in the scheme, Amanda Pritchard being one of them. But that's not to say that being a CEO is the end game of people on the scheme. What we're looking for is very good, experienced senior managers at the end of the day. We're currently looking for the next cohort of 250 trainees who will start early in September 2024. Okay, so this is the start of that process, the start of that search. The scheme is the strength of the scheme really is in the support that is available within the experience itself. Okay, so as I've mentioned, the large network of alumni, there's a large number of trainees currently on scheme. We've currently got about 550 or so trainees on scheme. So the networks that creates are really valuable to trainees on scheme, and it's this that's really made us number 2 in the Times Top 100 graduate employers list. We've been in that list for the last 25 years and in the top 10 since 2003. And while the awards aren't really the most important thing about the scheme, it's really about highlighting the fact that it's exceptionally well regarded. It's got a really good track record of providing leadership development experience. Okay, so in terms of the scheme, what we're looking for, so we recruit from a really broad base of applicants. It's called a graduate management training scheme, and indeed we do take on graduates. Not everyone is a recent graduate, so it may well be that you went to university a number of years ago and have had a slightly different career path and then have decided that this might be an appropriate career path for you. But predominantly the applicants are people who have either are currently at university or graduated recently. About a fifth of cohort members each year do come from within the NHS. So it may well be that you're attending today and you currently work within the NHS and have recently come across the GMTS as an appropriate development pathway for you. So that's brilliant. The minimum eligibility requirement is that you need a 2-2 degree. Okay, so there is a minimum bar. We feel that's important, hence it makes it a graduate scheme as opposed to an apprenticeship route. If you are interested in an apprenticeship route, they do exist, and there are a number that we can signpost you to if that is a preference that you have. Some of the other eligibility requirements really are just that you have the right to work in the UK. Okay, we are able to offer sponsorship in a small number of cases. if that is something that's important to you, then do post a question. We can certainly reach out to you and speak to you about the requirements later. But they are listed on our website, so you can go and have a look at those in a bit more detail. In terms of what we offer, what you're getting really as part of that experience is to become part of a really strong cohort of individuals going through the same challenging yet exciting journey at the same time. All right, and hopefully our trainees will share today that they, even since they've started the scheme, they've really developed some pretty strong bonds, some strong friendships with other peers, with other trainees going through the same experience, and with other individuals that are sort of working within the NHS as peers. You become part of that extended family that I spoke of. So you'll have access to other networks, senior colleagues who are able to offer support and guidance, throughout the scheme and beyond. And we do have alumni that will speak, very often of relationships they developed many, many years ago while on scheme that they've maintained for sort of 10, 15 years. The scheme is hard. It's challenging, balancing a pretty full-on job. It can be quite emotionally demanding, and at the same time doing some of the academic commitments that we offer. The salary is sort of career average for graduate schemes. It's going to be just over 27,000 next year, but the progression is really high. So on starting your first permanent role within the NHS, salary is around about 40 to 44,000 on average. It does vary depending on the role that the individuals take. But I think what's clear really is a phenomenal opportunity that's really unlike any other graduate scheme that's currently available in the marketplace, where you get to have a positive impact from day one, responsibilities from day one, an opportunity to work with some pretty amazing people and actually make a difference straight away. I'm going to come to some of our speakers today. Lucy, I'm interested to know, we haven't spoken very much since you joined the scheme. So I'm really keen to understand from you what interested you in the GMTS as a career opportunity for you.
So I would worked in the NHS before I joined the scheme. So I graduated in 2021 with my history degree. So I worked as an MDT and pathway coordinator for oncology or cancer. So I did that for about a year, and I was going for band 5, band 6 jobs. But the one thing I'd always faced was, one, you don't have any patient experience, and 2, you've only been here 6 months. When I'd found, I was in a band 4 role, I'd vastly outgrown it, and I was just doing some Googling one day because I was just interested, and I looked, and it was like this amazing scheme, and it would allow me to progress, and I'd be given all this responsibility. The one thing I found extremely irritating was I had so many ideas, different things that we could change in our service. I changed my MDT to the most I possibly could, but because I was band 4, that was kind of a limit I could go to. Where it was where the scheme, it was where you can do these really cool management experience. You have so much responsibility, or you can actually make a difference to the patient rather than just sort of being tucked away in the background. So that was one thing that attracted me, and it's given me such great responsibility to do things that I never even would have even thought about. When I was working, so I worked hospital based. At the moment, I do a lot of GP work, so it's really changed my view on sort of how things work. So I definitely would I always say to anyone, I recommend the scheme because it's a really, really good experience. That's the main thing that attracted me to the scheme, to really make a difference.
So that's a great example of having worked in the NHS already, seeing something that you think could be better, and then finding a way to actually put yourself in a position where you can actually have some impact on that. That's phenomenal. Kieran, what about you? I mean, does that sort of ring a bell with you, or do you have a very different experience in coming to the GMTS?
So for me, I think I almost fell into the GMTS, if I'm honest. So at uni, I studied sports marketing. My postgraduate was in marketing innovation. I was never supposed to kind of fit into the NHS mould, let alone sort of a management mould. I was, very much aimed towards marketing. COVID hit, and then I ended up moving back down to Plymouth from Winchester. I worked in a gym. I worked as the head of marketing across all of the gyms, and I realised quite shortly that everything that I'd, been good at, like in academia, I hated in practice because it was actually really boring. There's only so many things you can post about a pec deck, or so many things you can post about some barbells. It's not actually that interesting. And so then by the time we started moving around with the COVID vaccinations, I just thought, you know what, I'll go apply for that, see what it's like, you know, go and vaccinate some people. And after a month and a half, the management team was kind of back to their roles. So that meant that they needed a support manager, and I say again, fell into that. They asked me to do it. They said, give it a go. I went, yeah, sure. See what it's like. And then after a few months, I think they went, do you know what, you're not bad at this. And, you know, I was pretty comfortable just sat there doing kind of coasting. And they said, you can probably do a little bit more than this. You should probably look at the grad scheme. And then I spoke with a few people that had been through the grad scheme, and that now that band 9's within the trust here, and I was really sold on it. They just said, in terms of career progression, in terms of a lot of people, and if you get onto the scheme, you understand that they'll say it opens doors that you just wouldn't normally get to, and that's the same as a couple of my mates that I play rugby with. They you know, they might work, I think that one of them works for like Deloitte or something like that, and he sits in his team, and that's what he does every day. But on the grad scheme, you can you're able to go into different areas of the hospital that you wouldn't normally go into, and you can use the grad scheme as that guise, and then everyone kind of goes, all right, yeah, come and have a look, and you get to experience so like a breadth of experiences, and I'd say that's the best thing about the scheme. I
mean, you said a lot there. I'll probably come back to you on a few of those. I mean, you make it sound like it's very easy, but and you fell into it. But would you agree it's quite hard in terms of the application process? And we'll talk a bit about that later. But what really stands out for me is, you know, the background that you come from. You know, people wouldn't necessarily associate that, you know, a marketing background with coming into the NHS or being a good fit. And actually what we find is that trainees across the scheme have a huge variety of different backgrounds, huge variety of different cultural backgrounds, and a big variety of experiences that they bring. You know, we have mature individuals, you know, people who've perhaps worked for a number of years, who then, you know, decide to change entirely. My background, I mean, I haven't been through the scheme itself, is actually within education. So I was a head teacher for a short while, and a secondary school, challenging secondary school deputy head. But actually coming into the health service is a really good fit for the work that I've done in various different communities. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what you get as part of that package, because I think Lucy and Kira have intimated a few things there. So there are three key components really that make up the NHS GMTS experience. So the first is the experience itself. So what I mean by that is that you get three or so work placements. So the two key work placements for the majority of trainees, with an additional flexible placement, flexi placement. And Kieran and Lucy might mention their flexi placements, which I believe will be coming up shortly. So we'll be interested to find out what they are. The second component is the education. And this is really key because, you know, we'll talk in a bit more depth about it in a bit, but all trainees will undertake a significant amount of additional education. Okay, so you'll finish the scheme with a professional qualification, both in healthcare, leadership, and possibly in a specialism specific discipline. And then the last component is, again, not to be overlooked. So it's the leadership development component, because as I said, this is a fast track leadership development program. Okay, and really it is very much about the individual to make as much of that as possible. But what we offer is, you know, things like action learning sets, experiential learning, there's mentoring, support, depending on your situation. There are conferences, and there's lots of other career development and training opportunities to take advantage of. Okay, so there's those three key areas, and we'll talk through each one in a bit more detail. So in terms of the work experience, the placement, a key component of that is the specialism that you will select in your application. Now, the types of roles that are available, we offer 6 different specialisms. There's general management, human resources, finance, health informatics, health analysis, and policy and strategy. And you can see them there on screen with some indicated roles. Now, that's not an exhaustive list. It's just an indicative list, really. And the reason it's indicative is that, you know, within each of those specialisms, there's a huge variety of different roles specifically within each different organisation. Okay, so as a general management trainee, you may well be a project manager or a service manager, and therefore the responsibilities you have within the team that you're working in, within your host, will differ. Okay, and what we'll hear hopefully later when Lucy and Kieran share their individual experiences of being a general management trainee, is that they will have very different work experiences. Okay, and so each of the 250 cohort trainees that start each year have a pretty unique work experience because they're all working in very different hosts in different teams, working on different projects. And that's one of the things that makes the scheme as exciting as it is, really, because you have the opportunity to shape that. The role that you'll take on will be very much offered to you if you're successful. And while you're not able to choose necessarily the team that you're placed with, the type of work that you can get involved with moving forward, you are able to shape, okay, to a certain extent. So when you apply, you have the opportunity to choose a specialism, okay. And I'd say the last thing I'd mention about this is two things really. Firstly, if you're interested in finance, that scheme is slightly longer. So the finance stream is 2.5 years as opposed to 2 years that it is for every other specialism. But it's important to really think about what interests you, what you're passionate about. The scheme looks for high potential, okay, and what you're going to be doing in effect by selecting a specialism is choosing something in which you're going to develop a foundational expertise in. Now, we're not recruiting people to become specialists in each of these areas, because longer term you'll take that initial expertise and develop into leadership in some other area within the NHS. Okay, and it's quite often that we see that individuals starting in one specialism will move into others and then take on different roles. Many people will choose policy and strategy because they feel that's the most important of the specialisms, and that, in fact, that's where the decisions are made. But the reality is that all specialisms will be involved in policy to some extent, and all specialisms have the opportunity to involve themselves in the development of policy and how things are developed, worked, run in every service that you're based in. And that policy can then be rolled out and move between all of the other different bodies within the NHS. So even after the scheme is finished, you may move into a different area from your particular specialism depending on your career preferences. When you're applying, just think very carefully about which specialism you want to apply for. You can select more than one in your application, and only choose one that you are actually genuinely interested in. Okay, if we make an offer to you and it isn't a specialism you're interested in, the scheme will be very tough, and you might find it much more challenging than it needs to be. So individuals starting the scheme aren't expected to have any specific NHS work experience, okay? But Lucy has experience, and she will no doubt speak a bit more about that later. So anything you do have is a real benefit, but we're not expecting you to have in-depth knowledge of the NHS or to have worked in the NHS before, okay? The first placement, as a result, tends to be much more operational in nature. Okay, so you'll go through an orientation period when you first begin, and that will give you a broad exposure, broad understanding of the different services within the NHS. And then the placement that you're in first will generally be focused in and around probably in an acute trust. So examples of work might be managing rotas or tackling individual operational challenges that the provider faces within a particular team. It might well be that you're working with community or mental health trusts, or possibly within a primary care setting. Okay, there's quite a variety of different opportunities. You'll undertake your flexi placement, which is a short, flexible placement, and that is trainee-led. So again, Lucy and Kim will talk a little bit about their flexi placement, and they will no doubt have chosen that themselves. And it just gives individuals the opportunity to choose something they're particularly passionate in, and to maybe get experience outside of the NHS as well as in, or something they like it, they're sort of interested in gaining more knowledge about. As you move into your second official placement within the scheme, your particular development needs will be different, and it's likely that you'll need more strategic experience. And so the types of work that you might be involved with might be about doing some analysis, leading more project work, maybe having to develop and apply more influencing and persuasion skills about bringing people on board and tackling particular challenges or rolling out recommendations for a particular project. Trying to make sure that actually, while the answer may well have presented itself, in terms of some analysis work that a team may have done, it still needs to be adopted. And that means that rather coercing people to adopt that practice, it requires team working, it requires building relationships. So it is much more strategic in nature. As the NHS develops, and it is continuously reshaping and developing, you may well have heard of integrated care systems. So there are now 42 different integrated care systems, or ICSs. And so the nature of the work is becoming much less centralized. There are much more opportunities for system-orientated working, or bringing organizations together. So we're seeing a lot of trainees actually picking up projects and work, which is about bringing different disparate organizations together to work on a particular problem or to develop a particular type of service. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the education component. All trainees will undertake a similar elements of their academic experience. Okay, so this gives an initial overview of some of the academic commitments on scheme. It encompasses a range of different elements. So there are exams, there are assignments, with different providers. We provide action learning sets, which is an opportunity for people to come together to discuss and tackle challenges, okay, and be challenged. But also we've got the experiential learning component, which I talked about, and the way that manifests itself, and it may well be that our trainees will share a little bit about that in a minute, is the opportunities to work with different people to test out scenarios, to develop your own personal management skills or leadership capability. Okay. All trainees will do a postgraduate certificate, PG-cert in healthcare leadership, which is the Elizabeth Garrett Anderson program, and you can see details of that on the website. General management trainees will do that for the entirety of the 2 years, taking it all the way through to a postgraduate diploma. Okay. All other specialisms will complete the EGA to a PG-cert level, and then continue with their specialism specific subjects and their master's level qualification through to its second year to a postgraduate diploma level. Okay, most of this is largely assessed through essay-based assignments, the EGA, work-based activities, but it also does include sort of tutorials, opportunities for you to come together with different groups. All right. There are a number of residentials across your experience, so there are opportunities to travel from your host and to engage with different parts of the educational program. Action learning sets, it's a common development framework, and actually I think there are 8 or 9 one-day sessions across the year, and depending where you're based and where the other people in your group are based, it may be that you need to travel to that too. All of those travel expenses and accommodation, all of that is covered by the scheme. Okay, so while you aren't going to be in your host every single day, there isn't any additional cost to you to travel to those. The experiential learning, it's a pretty immersive package, so it's learning by doing. So it may well be, and I don't know, Lucy, I can see you on screen there, the experiential learning that you've engaged with so far. I mean, I know that we do provide opportunities to work with actors and to test out different scenarios. Is that something you've had experience of?
Yeah, definitely. We were up in Leeds about middle of July. That was I think one of our first ones in person, and that was really good. We were doing it's strange, it's very interactive, but it's strange how involved you get into some of the activities. So we were doing one the other day based on you had these certain coins, and we were divided up into different groups. The ones with the lesser amount, the middle, and the top. But as like the game kind of moved along, those in the top group got to decide certain decisions, and it ended up kind of us being on a stalemate, and I was in the middle group, and then the end group kind of said, no, we're refusing to work, we're not going to do it. So it's really interesting to see like how other people react, a different scenario, how you react, and how that reflects then in real life, and what you can do about it to avoid it or to make the situation better. So yeah, experience learning is actually really good. It's actually really fun, really sociable as well, because you get to see all your friends when you go out to Leeds.
And it's one of those things. I mean, we're talking about specialism and a particular type of work. If you're a financer or maybe, but actually all of the specialisms really involve, to a large extent, working with other people. Managing other people, working with different types of personalities, working with service users potentially. So, you can see how that sort of feeds in. Kieran, action learning sets is often something that people ask questions about, because it's not something that people will have perhaps engaged with before. How have you found that?
So I think with ours, we're really fortunate that our group's quite close for our Southwest cohort, rather. So action learning sets, the whole point of them is if you've got a problem in work, or it can be real, it can be hypothetical, you'd go there, and as a collective, it's almost using coaching cues and sort of like exploratory like techniques of how you could problem shoot that without having to give advice. So if I came to Lucy with a problem, Lucy might ask me questions, and then I'll answer them myself, and then from that you can figure it out without having to take advice, and it just encourages independent learning. It's quite a nice day, and we do that with different techniques. I think our last one we did, doing it as a group when we were going for a walk, because we found that walking stimulates us better, and we're able to think better than sat behind a desk or anything like that. And then you can kind of use that from your meetings. I quite like a walking meeting. I'll always take that over Teams one.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that one. The walking meeting, when there's a possibility of doing it, doesn't happen very often. When it does, it's very much appreciated. So it is actually, it is one of those things. It's quite different. It feels like it's a very non-confrontational way of maybe airing an issue that you have, and then seeking some advice and solutions by people asking you questions and helping you come to an understanding of actually how you want to move that issue forward. Would that be a pretty accurate way of describing that process?
Yeah, spot on.
In terms of the other professional qualifications that are offered as part of the GMTS, so I mentioned that all streams, apart from general management, will do a profession specific, so a specialism specific qualification. I've put them up on screen there. So the one thing I would highlight, I mean, it's for example, those that are undertaking the human resources specialism will be doing a human resources management postgraduate diploma at De Montfort University. We are going through a process of reprocuring all of our education providers. So, I think that it's safe to say that some of those may stay the same, some of them may change, but either way, the key component really is that if you're undertaking either human resources, finance, health informatics, health analysis, or policy and strategy, there will be an additional specialism specific professional qualification that you will be undertaking and you will finish with. So you have something tangible that's specific to the discipline in which you're developing. It can be quite hard managing the education and the experiential learning community. A lot of it's fun. Which intimated some of the sort of relatively fun and engaging activities that are on offer, but actually the assignments and some of the essays, and the fact that all of that is on top of what is quite a demanding role, can be a challenge, and it is really important to work hard to prioritize what you're doing and what you're engaged with. It is a mandatory part of the experience. Okay, so you do need to engage with the education. It's not an optional component. Trainees are expected to manage that effectively alongside their work in conjunction with their placement and program managers, who I'll talk a bit about later. So, it can be, fairly difficult to juggle. Lucy, I mean, how have you found the balance of the work demands and the educational demands? Has that been something that's provided some challenge for you?
Yeah, mine's not been too bad. So I'll get this a bit later, but I work predominantly from home. So I work for the ICB, so it's a subsection of the ICS. So when it gets a bit, when the workload's creeping up a bit, I can take maybe 1 or 2 days just to help do the essays a bit, and you do get study leave as well. But yeah, it does require, there are like part of the work-based assignments is there's a lot of sort of work and education interaction. So a lot of it you can do part of your everyday kind of experience. So we had to do sort of team development as part of our module 2, which for me worked really well because there's several teams I work with. So I picked one, and the nature of how the ICB works, I put a date in the diary and they kind of attended. That was quite okay. There's going to be sometimes we have to do things on weekends, there's reading and but it's really interesting. Like the stuff that you do is really interesting, and it relates as well to like what you're doing. So we were doing stuff about stakeholder engagement and the importance of values. That was our latest essay, and immediately I could see, okay, I could see the links, and then I know next time if I need to go into that situation, I can reflect those certain actions. So I know that the values now, which before I was thought, oh, they're pointless, no one really looks at them, are actually a really key tool in management. And you've also got your tutors as well, from Birmingham, and they're really, really useful, and they're always there to support you for any meetings. Or so I personally found it okay. I don't know, I think for my colleagues or my friends that work in services, it's a little bit more tough because they work they're going in every day. But I know that me and my fellow ITB colleagues find it a tad little bit easier. So it does depend on what placement you get.
Okay. And Kieran, how's that? Have you found that in terms of balancing the education component with your workload?
Yeah, I just echo what Lucy said. It really does depend on kind of where you are. For me, I'm operational, so I'm in an acute trust, so I'm always busy. But then I'm lucky because my line manager was also on the scheme, so I get Friday mornings to work from home and do a bit of my education then. So it really just does come down to kind of your actual placement in your setting. Yeah. I'd say that the work is tough. It's a postgraduate diploma, and I think everyone going into it realizes that. But I think it's not the end of the world.
It's not insurmountable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, there is an internal education team within GMTS that actively manages the external educational institutions. Trainees do deal with the education providers directly, usually through a tutor. So that is it's like a separate arrangement. And I mentioned the attending education is compulsory. Hosts do accommodate trainees, and as you've just heard, there is some flexibility around workload in terms of demands around study leave, or if there are particular assignments coming up, and there is time, there is a study leave policy, so there is the opportunity for trainees to sort of utilize that to make sure they're actually balancing their workload appropriately. It's a conversational arrangement usually with a manager. Good communication usually results in better support so that people know what's going on. Okay, just moving on. So one thing that we haven't really shared very much of in the past is usually around the competency framework. So I'm gonna mention it briefly and then move on. So one of the parts of the experience is that you are, as a trainee, developing competencies throughout your time. Okay, so you're developing experience by undertaking projects, undertaking work, and then creating evidence to demonstrate impact across a whole variety of competencies. There are some core competencies that are common across all specialisms. So I've listed some of those on the screen. Most of those won't be a particular surprise. Things like project management, leading work within teams and sort of developing the opportunity to create impact, where perhaps you've identified a particular issue. Change management is a big one. There's usually quite a lot of opportunities for involvement in that. Each specialism does have a series of competencies that are specific to that as well. So things like finance and HR, general management, health informatics do have specialism specific competencies that are also addressed throughout your experience. So we've heard a lot about some of the challenges that trainees can face on scheme. There's a lot going on. There's a lot on offer as a GMTS trainee, but there is a lot of support available as well. Okay, so it is definitely not a done-to experience. So many people coming from university might have experience of a pastoral system similar to when individuals are at school. It isn't really the same. There is, I guess, professional support available to you, but it is very important that trainees do access that professional support in the right way. So every trainee will have access to a regional trainee support manager, a TSM, who is there to, in effect, act as a conduit between you, your host, the regional lead, and the GMTS team. Every trainee has a placement manager, which works in a day-to-day capacity. So it's like your day-to-day line manager overseeing some of the work you're doing or in the team that you're working with. But you'll also have a program manager, and that program manager will stay with you for the duration of the 2 years or the 2.5 years that you're on scheme. So they can see the thread of your development over that time. Now, there are mentors and buddies available. Okay, so mentors in terms of professional mentor capacity, but also buddies in terms of other peers, other trainees on scheme, perhaps trainees from the previous cohort. So Lucy or Kieran may indeed choose to become a buddy for a new incoming trainee. That's a really valuable development opportunity as well. There's the network of fellow trainees. So we really do try and encourage networking both within region, within specialisms. And that's very much driven by trainees themselves who are looking for additional support, finding new ways of doing that. And that's a really big key component of the scheme as a whole. But there's also academic support. So from the academic institutions and the providers, they have their own support systems, the same as you would at any university with your tutor to ensure that you're actually making progress within the qualification that you're undertaking. The scheme is a national scheme, and this may seem relatively obvious, but it is worth sort of stressing. So the scheme runs across the entirety of the 7 regions within England specifically. Okay, on your application, you can specify up to 3 regions in which you are prepared to work. However, I'm going to really stress that choosing more regions doesn't increase your opportunity of receiving an offer. Okay, so if you are made an offer of a particular region and actually you don't want to work there, or you aren't able to work there, then it's not possible for you to take up the offer of a placement on the scheme. Okay, so really think very carefully about where you want to be located. Okay, and that may be where you are currently living, or where you are currently attending university if you're currently at university, or where you may well be relocating back to if you're moving home or moving to a particular region. Okay, it is possible to specify more than one region, and people do on their application form, but again, it's only really important for us to indicate where you are able to work. All right, if it turns out that you're not able to work in that particular region, I mean, I myself used to live in the southwest, but I don't anymore. I live in the east of England. Again, you can see on the map there, if I was offered a place now in the southwest, as much as I love that region, I wouldn't be able to accept it. Okay, so it's important that you think really carefully about which regions you're putting on your application form. When you do put a region, we cannot guarantee a particular city or location within that region. Right, that's also really key. Hosts are located across England, okay, and bearing in mind that they're all predominantly acute trusts, hospital trusts and organisations, they are spread out. So there are some in urban centres, but many are in rural locations as well. Okay, they all offer the same possibility of a phenomenal, outstanding experience. But it's important to note that you aren't able to specify, I would like to work in Liverpool or specifically in London, okay, other than London itself, which is a region in itself. All regions are phenomenal places to work, okay, so they do all offer amazing opportunities, but just think very carefully about which regions you're prepared to work in or able to relocate to if you were offered a role. Okay, so on the screen, I've just popped a really quick overview of what the actual job offer itself is. So there's on-the-job training, you get the academic experience, the professional study and qualifications, along with all of the other experiential learning that we've discussed today. In terms of the salary, this coming year, it's £27,700. I think it's £701.70. So I think that figure there's been rounded up, but it's around about £27,000. The salary does increase after year 1. So if you've met your performance targets and you're doing well with education, you're completing all of the components in terms of your competencies, that salary does increase in the 2nd year, and there's a formula for that. By the end of the scheme, we aren't offering a permanent role at the end of the scheme. However, the vast majority of trainees, and by vast I'm talking sort of 90+% of those that want to continue within the NHS do find themselves in a permanent role, or certainly a fixed-term contract role that they're looking to move into. And so the average salary is around about 40,000, 44,000. You have access to NHS pension, and there's a fully funded study package that we've discussed. The scheme, again, just to confirm, is 2 years long. It's 2.5 years for finance trainees. Okay, it is a full-time role. We do often have individuals asking if they can undertake the scheme part-time. Because of the demanding nature of the scheme, it is a full-time opportunity. Okay, so with the work experience, placement, and the education and then the experiential learning, it is a full-time experience. Okay, so just in terms of the recruitment stages, I'm very aware of time. We've packed a lot in today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just pop up the different stages, briefly touch on them, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Gabriel in the background just to post a link to the preparation hub in the chat. So the application process is relatively straightforward. We're opening applications on the 25th of October this 25th of September this year, and the application window will stay open until the end of October, the 31st of October. Once you've applied, you'll be invited straight through into the first online assessment. Okay, it's a strength-based methodology throughout the assessments. All right. If you're successful at that, you'll move through to work-based scenarios, and then again, if you're successful at that stage, you'll move through to the virtual assessment centre. The virtual assessment centres take place in January and February, and it's a half-day experience where you'll have an opportunity to meet a number of other applicants. You'll have the opportunity to engage in some individual exercises and a group exercise, and then a strength-based interview. If you're successful at the virtual assessment centre, you'll move into allocation, and we'll indicate to you whether we're able to make you an offer or whether we'll invite you to be on the reserve list for a place on the scheme. And then once you've accepted an offer, you'll move through an onboarding process. Now, it is quite a lengthy process. Most of that is outlined on the preparation hub. I can see Gabriel's popped the link up there. So I would encourage you to go through to that link. You'll have an opportunity to see what the assessments look like and have a little practice and see how they work. Okay. So I'm just going to come briefly. I apologise that we packed so much in because I actually wanted to come to Lucy and Kieran ever so slightly earlier. So we may run on if we're possible. If not, then not a problem. So Lucy, if I could just come to you, really. I'm just interested to hear from you. Talk a little bit about, you know, what is the day in the life of a general management trainee like? What's your experience?
Yes. So obviously I have previous in-service experience, so it was very different for me. So as you can see from my title, I've been placed at Mid and South Essex Integrated Care Board. So I live up near Cambridge, but I'm based down in Basildon. So the day that I do go into the office, it's probably a 2 hour, an hour and a half, 2 hour commute. That's why I don't go in very often. But it is but it's not bad, you know. It's quite a nice journey, so it's not too bad. But I do permanently work from home. So my role, I do sort of more over scope things. So I do I've just helped a GP practice in Chelmsford integrate. It's called Accurate or AccuRx. It's basically a GP-led triage system. Rather than ringing up a receptionist, you put in a request and the GP will triage your request. So we just had the feedback from that, and that's gone really, really well, and patients have really responded. The GPs not so much. They're quite stressed, but that's what it is. That's the things we have to face. But no, normal like a day-to-day basis. Normally get up, I get dressed, come down, have my breakfast, have a cup of tea. Then I log on, check my emails, see what's happened. I have quite a lot of meetings normally in a day, so I would meet with like my manager and I have 2 managers, but you know, report back, see what's going on. I might have meetings with different GP practices. Sometimes I'll go down in person, so particularly GP practice in Chelmsford, so I'll drive down there, meet them, see how they're going, see what they're doing, and then I'll do like work for them. So I've done like patient text messages. So I've created text messages that have gone out to 30,000 patients. I've done comms. I do like project plans. So my role is heavily a bit more project management, that side, rather than service management. So it really is a big range, but it definitely it is really interesting, and it's opened a side up that I'd never seen before. You know, I was just hospital based. I knew purely just about hospitals and how they worked, and then I went over, and then I realised that there's a whole complex aspect of the NHS that I hadn't even really considered. So when I move on to my flexi placement, which is I'm moving to I'll go back to Adam Brooks Hospital again, where I worked before, and I'm going to be service manager for oncology. So I'm going to hopefully bring my kind of ITB experience to that and see if we can work a bit more in this sort of integrated neighbourhood teams, like sort of integrated working. So not just working in our sort of silos. So we're working with police, with social care, try and join up the gaps where patients tend to fall through. So yeah, that's kind of my day to day. I'll stop babbling there.
That's what, I mean, that's a really good example of actually the different types of working. And I think, Kieran, you're currently working on site in an acute trust, so your experience is probably going to be quite different. But an example there, Lucy, of working with different organisations, working in a way that perhaps we wouldn't necessarily think of in terms of the NHS. Lovely, thank you very much. Kieran, you're currently working in an acute trust now, aren't you? How's your experience? How does that differ to Lucy's in terms of day to day?
Vastly different, purely because mine won't be that organised, or what's a better word for it? No, organised is probably the one. You come into it where it's operational. There's some firefighting. There's staff sickness that you have to react to on a daily basis. There's a lot more line management, and so where I'm at the moment with maternity, I think there is. When I first started, I think I was line managing 25, 30, I can't remember how many, quite a few. And so you have those issues and the people side of things a lot more on the day to day. It's hard to kind of quantify, and now I'm at a position where in my role where I'll cover service line manager of the day, which is then you become the manager as such for the care group. So then I'll go to the site meetings, and then I'll deal with other things. We might have like medical or surgical outliers that are based on our gynae suite, and although I'm in maternity, I then have to pick that up and try and get them moved to a more suitable location. Plenty of things. Nothing that I ever thought that I'd do at uni, if I'm honest. Nothing that I've ever thought I'd be able to do. But you pick it up, and you pick it up quite well. And I think that the scheme sort of enables you and sort of that environment to grow and to do the things that you think, oh Jesus, like that person's, they're quite senior, they know what they're talking about. And I think a year ago I'd have been in the same position where I was like, oh, I've got no idea what he's talking about. Whereas today I'm, being able to make those calls and being able to lean on people to move people. And yeah, I think it's worked out really nicely like that. And for Lucy and I to be on the same course, but to have such different experiences, I think it just grows us really nicely.
Can I ask? I mean, so the coming into that, I mean, from university into the role, and you're managing, you say 25 people. Yeah, I mean, how did you feel at the time starting that?
Yeah,
perhaps
so
not understanding too much about what the experience was going to be like to then be presented with that level of line management.
Yeah, so I think it can be a bit nerve-wracking at first. There's another graduate, he's up at North Devon. So he came straight out of uni. So he started when he was 21, and then he came into line managing people that were older than him, and he's got that to deal with. But I think what's good about the scheme is the fact that you're put into an environment where you're allowed to make mistakes. Like, I've made mistakes, that's fine. He's made mistakes. Lucy's probably made mistakes. People do make mistakes, but it's important. Like, the scheme then enables you to go, hand up, yep, sorry, my bad. What do I do better? And then you're given that opportunity to learn. Whereas you might not get that if you just went in straight to a normal role elsewhere. They might expect you to hit the ground running, whereas here is very much an environment where kind of that coaching rather than teaching.
And that's important, isn't it? Because no one's perfect. No one gets it right first time. And so, part of the development process of being a trainee on scheme is partly being thrown in the deep end a little bit. I would say that every placement for every individual trainee is shaped for that trainee. Yeah. So if anyone is on the webinar today thinking, I couldn't do that, there are people that may have moved a bit faster. There may be people who will have moved a bit slower, who depending on their capacity to take on responsibility, their trajectory would be slightly different. But it is one of those situations whereby you have the opportunity to take on as much as you feel you're able to, and to develop at a rate that's appropriate to you, and to have experiences that really you wouldn't necessarily get anywhere else. I can't think of any other role, Kieran, if you know of one, let me know, where you might be in a position of managing 25 people day one. and having the space to be able to learn how to do that with everyone around you, more often than not accepting that you are learning how to do that, okay, and supporting you to develop. Okay, I'm very aware of time. I was going to just do a short sort of Q&A session. I haven't seen a huge number of questions in the chat. Okay, but are there any that we can address?
We've just had one just now asking how long does each placement last?
Yeah, so it's a relatively straightforward question. Every trainee, finance is ever so slightly different, but for the majority of trainees, they'll do a year in their first placement. They'll do a 6 to 8 week flexi placement, depending, and then the rest of the time, the second year, is so the majority of that second year is in their second placement. Policy and strategy is slightly different in that there are 2 placements with an operational placement in the middle. And that's because even though you're working in NHS England as a policy, strategy, health and analysis trainee, it's really, really important that you understand the connection to the work of the NHS. So that operational experience, similar to a general management trainee, is absolutely key, okay? And really would encourage any policy and strategy applicant to take advantage of that.
We have another question here from Milena, who asks, is the salary for policy and strategy higher as it's based in London?
It's a good question. It's a very valid question. So the salary for trainees in effect is the same. There is, however, an inner London weighting. Actually, there's a London weighting that's graduated from central London to inner London, outer London, and fringe. So I think it's a 15% bump for the inner London. I think it's 10%, and then 5% for fringe. So that is an addition. That's the same for any trainee on any specialism, not just policy and strategy. I would say, though, that policy and strategy health analysis trainees are only able to have placements in London or Leeds, North East and Yorkshire region. Okay, those specialisms are not offered anywhere else in England.
Arjun asks, do you need any previous healthcare related experience to apply for this scheme?
Well, Kieran, I'll throw that question to you. Do you think you need any previous healthcare experience to succeed on the scheme?
No, not at all. And what I'd say as well is where I'm saying it's quite, well, I found it quite easy to go through the application process. The application process is hard, but it's based off your personality. I think a lot of the time at the start you have your aptitude, but then it's more about kind of being able to talk to people, and we don't need you to be the top of the class and whatever, just need to be a good person, want to join for the right reasons and kind of go from there.
Absolutely. So the application process doesn't stipulate that you need any prior experience of healthcare specifically. We are looking for potential. Okay, so all of the assessment process, each of the assessment stages, it is looking to assess your strengths. Okay, and we're really looking for a really wide variety of different personality types, a wide variety of people that think in different ways, because it's only by having that diversity then we can really solve the problems that the NHS faces.
Romana asks, just out of interest, in previous intakes, how many applicants have applied? Okay,
so on average, we receive around about, and it does change each year, about 18,000 applications for the scheme. Okay, that might sound like a huge amount. Okay, but what I would say is, and the advice that I give every potential applicant is, if you are committed that this is the right pathway for you, then I would absolutely encourage you to apply. Okay, I see that Lucy's got a hand up. Lucy, I'll come to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that just apply. Like when I joined, so I saw it opened and I was like, I'm not going to get in. There is no way. I know there's no way I'm going to get in. I'm not even going to bother. And then I remember I went around a friend and I came home. I thought it was the last day of application. I thought, you know what can I lose? I just applied. And then I got through, and then I remember telling my manager at the time, I said, I've applied and I've got through for the second round, and I applied again, and then I got through to the assessment centre. And it wasn't that bad. It was, it was quite a relaxed day. There was no pressure. It wasn't like high tense stakes. It was just, I just came in as myself, performed how I would if I just went to a normal job interview or just a normal event, and when I got the email through or the phone call saying that I'd got in, I was honestly shocked. So if you think, oh no, I probably won't get it, just apply anyway, because you never know. I think everyone said when they think on the welcome event when we all joined that you don't think you're going to be the one, but you may be, so just do it.
I think that's excellent advice. I don't think I need to add anything to that at all. If you feel strongly this is right for you, then absolutely apply. I would say there are trainees on scheme that did apply more than once, okay, that didn't pass the first year but were committed and applied again in the second year and then got through. So that does happen, okay. So not to be discouraged if the first application isn't successful. It doesn't mean it's a definite no forever. It just means that in that particular cohort you may not have been successful or might not quite have been ready. I see a question from Rachel. Is the 250 jobs available split equally between the 7 regions? It's a good question. Roughly, yes. I think to be precise, the number of placements available does change in each region ever so slightly each year. It is proportion to a combination of the workforce size and the population size of that region. Okay, but for example, northeastern Yorkshire, there are slightly more placements available, partly because it's a much bigger region. Okay, same with the Midlands, it's a very big region, so there's slightly more placements available there. But actually, that shouldn't really steer you in terms of where you apply. Key around the region is to apply for a specialism in a region that you want to work in. Okay, I think that's the key advice there. All right. Okay. I can see Rachel's typing again. I'll wait just in case there's a follow-up question. Otherwise, I'll begin to wrap up. And I'll say in advance, just thank you very much to our speakers today, to Kieran, to Lucy, for coming. They are working very hard. It is a busy role. To take the time out to come and share their experience with the day is really valuable. So thank you very much appreciated, both of you. Gabriel, thank you very much for just facilitating in the background. Now I can see Rachel's just popped in that last question. Could you be offered a job in an area that you did not select when applying? So no, we wouldn't offer you a role in a region that you hadn't indicated. Okay, so if you're indicating 3 regions, we are looking to try and offer you one of your preferences. Okay, so we wouldn't be offering you a specialism or a region that you hadn't indicated on your application form. That's why it's really important that you think really carefully about what you are putting, so that you are telling us what it is that you would really like to do. And I think it's the same advice with specialism. There really isn't any point putting a specialism that you're not really interested in developing a career in, because if we offer you something in that, it's not going to be suitable. Okay. Thank you very much for attending, everyone, today. Thank you for taking the time out, our participants, our attendees today. Thank you for showing an interest in the GMTS. The applications do open on the 25th of September. We are going to be running a number of different webinars with lots of different trainees sharing their experiences. So if you are interested in coming in more, please look on our website for those dates. We are running a number of specialism specific sessions, and also some sessions specifically looking at diversity and low socioeconomic social mobility specifically. So do show an interest in those if you're interested. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.